My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
And my name is Pixel Patch. I'm a joyful geek with an expertise in gaming, both tabletop and video.
Our mission is to bring nerd culture to the masses.
And by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, TV, mega comic books, or is that graphic novels, cartoons, groups, that's animation, Disney, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Digimon, and Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Nintendo, Cinematic Universes, Marvel, DC, Justice League, is Batman, Leagues with Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Avengers, Iron Man, Captain Jack, Loki, Spider-Man, and Hulk and Logan, X-Men, Battlers, Allen, Galaxy, Guardians, Star Trek, Prick, Prick, Card, and Janeway, Nerds and Geeks from Gather Around, and join them in the Big Bad Jar, Average Joe and Pixel Patch, they peek under the microscope.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd culture under the microscope. I have a neuralyzer right here, and I would like you, Ben the Movie Buff, to neuralyze me, help me forget the memory of Dark Phoenix.
Okay, sounds good. Just putting my shades on. Please look here. There we go. You haven't seen Dark Phoenix. You don't know what Dark Phoenix is. And anytime someone asks you about the Dark Phoenix, you say, "What's that?" So there's your neuralyzer back.
Did you just neuralyze me?
Well, I thought you asked me to.
I don't remember asking you to ask me.
Well, just trust me. You'll be okay.
Okay. Well, Ben the Movie Buff, you're back. We thank you for being here. Pixel Patch is indeed moving this weekend. He's I don't know where he's living now, and for all I know, he's obviously somewhere.
Yes, they did find a place. I can't remember exactly where it is. But
it's not under a bridge.
That's right. It's not in an alleyway.
It's not underwater, as far as I know.
4 walls and a roof.
Hopefully.
Yep.
So we're thankful to have you back, and whatever you did to me at the start there, I appreciate it. I'm sure there was good reasons for it. I'm going to trust you there.
You're welcome. It was my first experience of that sort. So yeah, I had a great time.
We're going to be talking about the Men in Black today, and for anyone who is actually part of the Men in Black out there, we're talking about the fictional version that's represented in comic books and films. So if the real Men in Black are out there and they're listening to this, we have nothing bad to say about you. Thank you for whatever you do for us. Because apparently that's actually the idea for the Men in Black as a franchise stemmed from this kind of urban myth of the Men in Black who
right.
Government conspiracy guys who just show up in black suits and make stuff go away.
Yeah.
I didn't really know that was a thing until after I saw the movie back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Were you indoctrinated in the world of conspiracy theories as a child?
To be honest, not really. The only way I hear about conspiracy theories are from other people that are really fascinated in conspiracy theories. And all it starts with, have you heard the one theory about this? And then normally it's no, I haven't. Well, let me take 20 minutes and explain it to you. So I've heard about them here and there, but that is kind of a cool start to the Men in Black franchise is that, yeah, what if there are Men in Black saving the universe right now and we don't know it, and there have been all sorts of alien invasions, but they just use the technology so we just don't see any of it. So thanks, guys.
So this is indeed a comic book film franchise. Most people wouldn't know that it's based on a comic book because the comic book didn't last all that long. It was kind of like a 3-issue miniseries originally.
Yeah.
So it was published in 1990 and 1991. It was written by a guy named Lowell Cunningham.
Cunningham. Thanks, Elsie.
And it was illustrated by Sandy Carruthers. That name I can say more clearly.
Cool.
So it was originally a 3-issue miniseries that was published originally by a company named Air Cell Comics. If you haven't heard of Air Cell Comics, it was later purchased by Malibu Comics.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Malibu Comics?
Possibly.
Well, Malibu Comics was in itself actually bought out by Marvel Comics.
Oh my goodness. So
technically, the Men in Black comic books are the property of Marvel Comics at this point.
Cool. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So people are saying, does this mean we get to see the Men in Black in the MCU? Well, no, because the movie rights for these characters were sold before they were owned by Marvel. And I feel like the arrangement is similar to Spider-Man, where as long as the people who are making the movies keep making movies, they get to keep those rights.
Right. Yeah.
But one day, we could have the Men in Black join the Marvel Comics universe.
Anything is possible. After seeing Endgame and just the big franchise world-building movies we've seen in the last 5-10 years, anything's possible.
What I found first of all, I've never read these Men in Black comic books.
Me neither.
Looking at the cover here of the first issue, it certainly seems a little different.
Oh wow, yeah, that's Men in Black for adults.
Yeah, but I do remember when I watched the first film as a child, there was like a kind of a title card that came out and said, based on the Malibu comic by
Right.
Lowell Cunningham. So I knew, based on a comic book, and that's all I really needed to know. I mean, it's not like I was super keen to go back and read the comics. So in that sense, it kind of failed.
Yeah.
Or it failed. The comics failed me, or I failed the comics, or the movie failed. If the purpose of a comic book film is to help you go back and read the comics, then it failed in that purpose.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. It does. I mean, a lot of the Marvel movies, for example, like I rarely go back and read the comics, but I did purchase the Civil War comic before the Civil War movie came out because I wanted to see how different was it going to be, and it was pretty different. So yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
So just to speak briefly about how the comic books are different from the movies. In the comic books, the Men in Black fight everything. So they're not just there to fight aliens, they're basically there to fight any supernatural or paranormal threat.
Okay.
So they take on monsters, they take on witches, like everything kind of supernatural.
Yeah.
And not just aliens. And it seems like their mission is more so, not necessarily to protect the Earth, but their mission is more so to help keep the general public ignorant of the existence of these creatures.
Okay.
So like the neuralyzer exists, but it's not meant to necessarily wipe memories. It's meant to like kind of be like a form of hypnosis or manipulation.
Right.
Like basically convincing you to believe a lie.
Wow.
So they seem a little less virtuous, I guess, than they're presented in the movies. And I can only assume that the decision to kind of like narrow the scope of the organization was to help make a tighter movie.
Yes. It seems to me, and I guess this can be true for comic books. It can be true for books and series of books. Is that when you're making a movie through that adaptation process, you really do make a lot of changes. You have to kind of figure out. And I was reading about this recently, where they're like, it's called breaking the back of the book to figure out what's the intent of the book, right? Like, what's the intent of the story, and then taking that and then trying making it work for the film. Because I feel like the first Men in Black would have a little less pizzazz if it was the Men in Black, they fight everything, right? Like, it just feels not as focused. I feel like because it's aliens and shapeshifters and this and that I feel like it does help it become its own thing. Because when you say like, oh, they fight everything, there are a fair amount of other stories and franchises that deal with that deal with stuff like that as well, that I feel like it does help Men in Black become its own thing, which is good, because in this day and age, if you have like, hey, here's a cool idea, but it's kind of like everything else, what's the point in seeing it unless there's something that makes it different from something that makes it stand tall amongst all the other competition?
Now, in the way that it is very comic booky is that it's kind of based on a secret organization, and it's a thing. It's a trope almost at this point in comic books, but also other sci-fi stuff to have this like paramilitary spy organization that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And they're superheroes in the sense that they go about their mission anonymously and no one knows that they exist. And I things that I've seen since Men in Black that I can draw a comparison to would be like Hellboy.
Yep.
Because like the bureau, what is it, BRPD, whatever that stands for,
right?
They exclusively fight paranormal threats,
right?
And they're, depending on the version of the story, they're secret. You have like the Kingsman, which is again like a secret spy organization that, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist.
Right.
And then you even have stuff like, I've lost it.
Are you thinking of R.I.P.D.?
Well, there's that one.
Because that's another one that sounds awfully like Men in Black with Jeff Bridges and Ryan Reynolds, I think. Never seen it because it just sounds like discount Men in Black, but I'm pretty sure that's like in the same veins of Men in Black.
Oh, I was even thinking like S.H.I.E.L.D.
S.H.I.E.L.D., right. Yeah.
In the Marvel stuff, because generally most people, depends on the version, I guess.
Yeah.
All I have to say, like, it doesn't take much imagination to pretend as if there's like some secret organization kind of shaping our reality or fighting things that we can't see or pushing history along.
Yeah.
I guess in the sense that the original concept of Men in Black was rooted in a conspiracy theory.
Right.
This kind of furthers that idea, like, oh, there's these secret organizations no one knows about, and they're doing stuff that. Now, would you have enjoyed the first Men in Black more if it had more of the supernatural, like if there were more zombies or werewolves or other creatures other than just aliens?
I guess it depends on a few things. On the one hand, if they kept the same story of Men in Black for the most part, like the way it is, but there was that inclusion of of the different monsters and such. I don't know if I would, greatly dislike it. But on the other hand, I feel like you won't know unless you're actually able to kind of make that version and see how different does it become when you have to, when you have all these extra monsters and vampires and werewolves and whatnot. So I think the movie is really good the way it is. So it is possible that by bringing in those elements that it might have made it feel a little special. And yes, there's lots of sci-fi out there. There's lots of movies dealing with aliens. But I guess the fun thing about Men in Black, and I guess one of the reasons why it succeeded as much as it did, was that it was a fun take on fighting these aliens, right? Because when you think about it, like a lot of the times, and I mean Men in Black has both of this, but when you think about aliens, if you're like me, you think of alien, you think of aliens, you think of like in space, no one can hear you scream. You can think of like when aliens are a threat. And I think less about like the kind of peaceful aliens that you see in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So it's kind of cool that Men in Black in a way kind of has both, right? Because it has aliens that do mean you harm, and then it has other aliens like the smaller, skinny, insect-looking guys that kind of like, hey, talk like this and whatnot.
The worms.
The worms, yeah. So I think the way that they did it was probably the best way, and that adding those more monsters. Maybe it wouldn't have made a huge difference, but we won't know unless we actually saw a version that had that. So I think it was a wise idea to kind of contain it just a little bit more.
So the first comic books were published in 1990 and then 1991. Then the first movie came out in 1997. Mm-hmm. It was the highest grossing film of that year outside of Titanic.
Right, yeah.
So if you exclude Titanic as like, one of the highest grossing films of all time from the list, then Men in Black was the highest grossing film of that year.
Yep.
And I can't remember when Titanic came out. It probably came out in December. So
yes,
we can certainly say that Men in Black was the biggest film of that summer.
Yes, I would bet that it was.
I was too young to see it in theaters, but I remember watching it on home video. Mm-hmm. And something that really struck me about the movie was just it was an interesting balance of kind of like action and comedy. And then just the kind of the way it presented our world in an interesting way, like just that tabloids are, they're the greatest source of news available because it's where all the actual stuff that these aliens are doing is getting published, but no one believes it to be real.
Right, yeah.
They are the best kept secret in the universe.
You know how to use these things?
No idea whatsoever. Their mission is to monitor extraterrestrial activity on Earth. They are your best.
What's this thing? Watch your head!
Your last.
There's only one way off of this planet, baby. And that's through me.
And your only line of defense. Tommy Lee Jones, Will Smith, Men in Black, rated PG-13. Opens everywhere July 2nd.
I thought the way that it kind of like showed a different version of our world, and like you said, kind of like showing both good and bad aliens.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to me, and like a lot of the aliens looked really cool, and like either they were like hiding inside some kind of alien or human suit, or they were like piloting a human robot or something.
Right. Yeah.
And just the chemistry between Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. Even as a child, when I didn't understand the concept of chemistry between actors, I could tell that like it was fun seeing those two guys together.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, like one of my highest praises of the first Men in Black, which I haven't seen in a while, but that, and I mean, I guess maybe it's a bit of a stretch to call a movie like that like a buddy cop movie because they're not exactly cops, but they are the Men in Black. There's some sort of like enforcement.
It's close enough.
It's close enough, but I would say the two of them talk about a fun and dynamic duo. Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, both, they're those kind of like opposites attract, right? I mean, when you think of Will Smith, he is pretty different from Tommy Lee Jones being that kind of grizzled veteran, but man, you put the two of them together, and a lot of the laughs I had from the movie was from the two of them just, trying to get along, trying to figure each other out and all that. Yeah, they're both awesome in the movie. They really are.
I think buddy cop's a good way to say it because you have the guy who's new and
exactly, yeah,
first day on the job, and then you have the guy who's been around for a while, and there's that whole partner dynamic. So I think that's a fair comparison.
Yeah, it's kind of like a buddy cop movie a little bit.
This was like Will Smith's second movie after Independence Day. And it was like the first one where he was like the star. And
that's
not,
right. It
not
was early
just like because Independence Day is an ensemble,
right?
And he's part of it. He's got his whole his thing there.
That's right.
But his name is like at the top of the billing alongside Tommy Lee for this one.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And at the time, people was like, "This is Will Smith at the height of his powers." Like him
him
just being super charming and charismatic and authoring up some funny lines. And I think I might have seen this before I saw either Independence Day or even Fresh Prince. So this was probably my first exposure to Will Smith as a human. Maybe he's an alien. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
But I certainly do have fond memories of the first film. And then when Men in Black 2 came out 5 years later, I was old enough to be discerning, I suppose, and I remember enjoying it but being disappointed.
Yeah, my earliest memories of the first Men in Black was I remember it was shortly after I had seen Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, and after seeing that movie I was like, okay, I'm a movie buff. That's what I'm doing now, right? I'm going to watch as many movies as possible. I'm going to make as many movies as possible. And I remember my dad suggesting to me, he's like, oh, there is one sci-fi movie I'd love to own and that you should see, Ben. And I was like, which one is that? And then he's like, Men in Black. And I was like, I've heard of the Men in Black, but I've never seen them before. So I had such a fun time watching it and really, really enjoyed it. And I felt the same thing too, that when I saw the sequel, it was fine, but it suffered from the usual kind of sequelitis where it just, it could not
More of
be
the same.
Exactly. It could not be like the same, just as good as Men in Black, if not better. It was just not as good. Not a bad movie, but not the good movie that I think a lot of us were hoping for.
Yeah, and I understand like why they brought Tommy Lee Jones back to kind of have that dynamic again, but it really cheapens the end of the first film to like have him retire and be happy. Spoilers for the first Men in Black, by the way.
Right, yeah.
It cheapens the ending of the first film to just have him brought back in the second one.
That's right, yeah. In movies, as we discussed ever so briefly in, that movie from last week, is that, yeah, sometimes, a decision is made about like, oh, a character is doing this by the end of the first movie. You're like, okay. And then, yeah, they're just like, no, on second thought, we'll just bring them back. We'll do the opposite of the thing we said we'd do before. And yeah, it's like, okay, like, I guess I see why they did that, but still not, it's hard to feel like, oh yeah, that was absolutely the right decision. Like, we know they wanted to keep that chemistry going.
Yeah. So despite Men in Black 1 being nearly the highest grossing film of its year, Men in Black 2 saw declining returns, made way less money.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they decided to kind of push ahead and do Men in Black 3, except it took them a whole decade to get that one done because I didn't realize it, but Men in Black 3 didn't come out until 2012.
That's right, yeah.
So I don't even think I saw that in the theaters. I wasn't like, at that point, I was kind of like on to other things. Yeah. And I was like, oh, they're making another Men in Black. And then I eventually did see it, I think like on Netflix or something, and I was like, oh, that was good, but I didn't feel like I'd missed anything by having rushed out to the theaters to see it.
Yeah, I'd seen the first two Men in Black movies by the time that the third one had come out. And I remember my dad saying, he's like, oh, I really want to see this. We're like, okay. So we went as a family to go and see the movie. And really, the only thing I remember, the thing that is absolutely worth seeing that movie for is Josh Brolin's impersonation of Tommy Lee Jones, which apparently was so good that during the first take when he came on and the whole crew watched him be Tommy Lee Jones, the director said cut and everyone gave him a round of applause because they were like, that was so spot on. And it was. Like, Josh Brolin is quite a good actor, but yeah, when it comes to like doing an impersonation and kind of doing the younger Tommy Lee Jones persona, he nailed it. Like, that's the highlight of the movie for me. That's the one thing I remember. And that Jermaine Clement, who's one of the guys from Flight of the Conchords, plays the bad guy. That's about it.
Is that him under there?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Half of Flight of the Conchords.
I know him from Moana.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's the shiny.
The Honest trailer from the Men in Black trilogy was released like 2 weeks ago. Have you had a chance to watch it yet?
Yes, I did see it a few weeks ago. Yeah.
They basically joke about how there's so many similarities between the three movies that like there's so many story elements that are kind of like exactly the same and they tell the same jokes and upon reflection, I kind of agree with that kind of criticism. It's like there is a lot of similarities that you don't really notice when you're watching. It's like my mind didn't say, "Oh, this is exactly like the last movie," or it's like, "Oh, we gotta get the thing that's smaller than it seems to be," or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't really catch that. And in the end, Men in Black 3 ended up making less money than even the second one. So this is certainly a franchise that saw declining returns as it went on.
Yep.
Would you agree with Honest Trailer's criticism of the franchise in terms of its sameness?
Yeah. I would say I feel like once in a while Honest Trailers make criticism that I think are unjust. So there might be a few in that Honest Trailer. Like I'd have to rewatch it again to make sure. Which I mean I know I don't have time for that now, but I do agree with that. Yes, I think they're kind of pointing out the fact that certain movie studios, you have lots of people saying different things, but as we've seen before, there tends to be this safe idea that it's like we want the same but different. But really, the different thing that you do is still pretty darn similar to what was done in the movie before. So yes, I feel like while some people, and I'm one of those people, like I have kind of high standards for sequels, and it's like I want maybe like the feel, a similar feel of the first movie, but like give me a different story, give me different jokes, give me something that separates itself from the first movie. So, no, I agree. I think it does kind of have that formula that it's like, let's just go back to the formula, modify it here and there, but keep it overall the same. And really, you just keep on getting, like, oh, this was like the first movie, but not as good as the first movie. Like, it seems to be a lot of that.
Yeah, like, if I think of sequels like Terminator 2, Captain America Winter Soldier, or even Spider-Man 2, those sequels really elevate the story and take all the characters to a new place. And so it doesn't feel like it's a rehash of the first film.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think especially Spider-Man 2, is one of those sequels. And I think sometimes those are the best sequels, is that it's similar enough to the first movie, but you elevate it. You try and feel like, what can we do to build on this world? Something that we haven't seen in the first movie, so that by the time you get to the end of the second movie, you feel like you've kind of like explored a new area of this franchise, that if you stay in the same area that you did before, you're basically going to get like, the same kind of arcs, the same kind of this and that. But I like when sequels try and take those risks and try and just do something different while also trying to honor the first movie, which is easier said than done. But I think, when you play it safe, there's only so much of that you can do before people say, we want something else.
Yeah, I really think the Men in Black sequels should have gone the road of the comics, because if they had decided to expand the world to like have them fight vampires or goblins or whatever, something other than just aliens, I think that would have been a way to kind of like elevate the story, because it would have taken all of the Men in Black out of their comfort zone, dealing with something they're not familiar with, and kind of opening up the world more, because I don't know, maybe it's just the aliens they've chosen to represent in the movies, but they're all basically just people who want to kill somebody. Like there's like the fact that they're aliens is not really the only really reason it matters that they're aliens is because they have some kind of special power that helps them kill people.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it seems to me some of the best sequels that I've seen, and I think the Toy Story films certainly come to mind, and from what I've heard about Toy Story 4, I hear it's really, really good, so fingers crossed. I want it to be so good, as nervous as I've been for it, but calling upon the earlier Toy Story movies, it seems to me that like when you have your first movie and you kind of set up, here are the characters, here's the world, here's the story, you almost got to wonder, like, what would the audience be interested in seeing the second time around, right? That's why I think Toy Story 2 works so darn well as a great sequel, is that it takes this whole idea about like Woody's origins, and it says, like what could that be like, right? How difficult could that be for him? And then also it just has another moral to the story, right? Like Toy Story, the moral of the story for Toy Story 1 is different than Toy Story 2, but they both still are meaningful by the end of it. And I feel like, you have to try and figure out what's a cool thing that we could do with this sequel that still honors the first one, but feels enough of its own thing so that people don't feel like they're watching a rehash. Because too many times I think we watch a rehash and we're like, that was okay, but maybe it would have been better if they tried to do something a little more different.
Yeah, and this is all helpful for us as we talk about the new film that's just come out.
Yeah.
Men in Black International.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie's development kind of starts with the Sony hack.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Sony hack?
I do. I do remember reading about it here and there, and I don't think like I got into too much detail about exactly like what was hacked, but I remember just seeing general articles about the Sony hack happened and everyone's losing their minds.
Yeah, so I think this was back in like 2013 or 2014, but basically someone hacked into Sony Pictures emails and then released stuff to the public.
Yeah.
So there were all these kind of like ideas about what Sony was going to be trying to do with their movies, that ideas are being floated around over at the studio that were being kind of released to the public. So all these kind of like conversations that were meant to be kept in-house were now out for everyone to see.
Right.
So I remember one movie that was talked when there was an Aunt May movie.
Oh.
Like a prequel about Aunt May when she was younger.
As strange as that sounds, and I doubt it would make that much money, I would be, just for the sake of curiosity, I feel like I'd have to go and see that movie, because really all the superhero movies, the one big thing they have in common is that they're like action-packed, lots of comedy, big spectacles. Even the smaller ones still have like big stakes. And I feel like something like Aunt May would just be here's Aunt May just kind of living her life, and she meets Ben and romance blossoms. Like that would be kind of interesting to have like a character from a superhero comic book universe. But it's not so much about like a grand conflict. It's just, her living her life and figuring things out.
Kind of related to that, this summer on the channel Epic, there's going to be an Alfred Pennyworth miniseries called Pennyworth.
I think I've heard about that,
And
actually,
it's about him when he's like a young spy
Oh, man.
in Britain. So
But of course he's a spy, right? There's still that sense
it's still
of
an
like...
action series.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's still kind of cool, though.
To all filmmakers, stop making action shows and movies that are prequels, because if we know your main character survives to be in some other, thing that this is meant to be a prequel to, it loses a lot of attention because we know they survive.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
just stop. Please stop.
Surprise us.
Do prequels as like character studies and dramatic things that show us events from a person's life, but don't put them in the middle of an action story.
Yeah, that's fair.
Closing the loop on that.
Yeah.
So back to the Sony hack. So one of the ideas that was in the Sony hack emails was an idea of doing a crossover between Men in Black and 21 Jump Street, which at this point in history, they had made the two 21 Jump Street movies with Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum.
Right.
So it seemed like because that franchise was doing well at the time, it seemed like a real possibility that there was going to be coming along the line a crossover film where these 21 Jump Street guys met the Men in Black.
Yeah.
When you heard about that idea, what was your reaction?
I guess it's kind of like the Aunt May idea, the fact that you wonder, how do you make something like that work? Which, like, I'm sure there's a way, but it's interesting because they both... Comedy is the big through line, right? That's the one thing that kind of connects both of them easily. But then you have one that's very much, like, has kind of a sci-fi... Yeah, but basically, like, sci-fi roots and aliens and this and that and conspiracy theories. Whereas 21 and 22 Jump Street... I mean, it would be a stretch to call them realistic movies, but obviously, if you took both of them, you're like, which one would more likely happen in our reality? Will be like, obviously, 21 and 22 Jump Street.
Yeah, Channing Tatum's totally a high school.
That's right. Yeah. He looks like he's 16. But I think at the end of the day, like, I'd watch it. I mean, those movies where, like, Freddy versus Jason, Batman versus Superman, Godzilla versus King Kong, movies like that, it's like, yeah, you know what? I know these movies and stories well enough that I would see it just for curiosity's sake. Would I see it in the theaters? I don't know, but I would definitely rent it or watch it at some point on home video just to see how do they do something like that.
I was not excited about the idea. I hadn't seen the 21 Jump Street movies at that point.
Yep.
And I was like, oh man, they're just going to turn like Men in Black into a parody of itself, which wasn't something I was excited about. And as all the Sony hacking stuff kind of quieted down, it seemed as if this idea kind of also disappeared.
Right.
I don't know if it's because they saw the public kind of like reaction to the idea and were like, oh, people don't actually want that. Let's just back away from that. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But it wasn't until February 2018 that this new film was officially released.
Right.
So there was a good 2 or 3 years there where nothing happened.
Yep.
So they announced that F. Gary Gray was going to be the director. Mm-hmm. And this was like right the year after, I think, Fate of the Furious came out last year.
2017.
That was 2017.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, this was after he had directed the Fate of the Furious, the 8th Fast and Furious movie.
Yep.
So it seemed like a good match. Whatever guy with recent success directing a big action movie.
Yep.
And that Chris Hemsworth was going to be the star.
Yep.
I was a little concerned because Chris Hemsworth was also attached to Sony for the Ghostbusters remake, which wasn't a terrible movie, but it was underwhelming, and it could have been so great, and it really wasn't. So I was like, they're going to keep using. I mean, I realized because not all those decisions were Chris Hemsworth's fault,
right?
But I don't know, it's just kind of like that association of Sony plus Chris Hemsworth.
That's right. His involvement is the bad luck charm. He's like, oh no, Chris Hemsworth involved.
And then a month later, they announced that Tessa Thompson was going to be the other lead person in the movie. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, because at that point Thor Ragnarok had come out and been a huge success.
Yep.
So this idea of, let's take two actors who have chemistry in one franchise and put them together in another. I don't really know if that's happened all that much in real life.
Let me think now here. I don't think it happens that often. I think part of it has to do with the fact that there are just so many cases where you hire actor A and actor B, or in some cases actress B, and you put them together to see what happens. And of course, if something works, then it's like, oh great, let's hold on to that and keep that going. But yes, the whole idea of two actors that were already in a movie together, and that it worked out well, and they did have good chemistry, and they were both entertaining, right? They were both fun to watch. I don't know if it's happened that often, but I think after the recording of this podcast, I am going to check that out and see whether it's happened before, because now I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, because there certainly are just actors that collaborate together a lot.
Yeah, although one thought, I know Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis, they've been in, like 4 or 5 movies together, I'm pretty sure. They were in Die Hard with a Vengeance first, which they did technically have to like act a lot off of each other because they both spent a lot of time in the movie together. Then they weren't
they both in Pulp Fiction?
They were, that's right, that's the other one, Pulp Fiction.
But I guess they weren't together.
That's right, I don't think they shared any scenes together, so that one kind of doesn't count. But then Unbreakable comes out, I think 5 years after Die Hard with a Vengeance.
That sounds right.
But I think, of course, like their relationship in that movie is a bit different than the hectic circumstances that they're both under in Die Hard with a Vengeance. But who knows? Maybe someone watched like Die Hard with a Vengeance and kind of saw like, oh, like these two are good. Oh, they kind of have chemistry. Like maybe we'll have to change that to a certain extent because they're different characters in
Unbreakable.
In Unbreakable, thank you. But who knows? I mean, like that's one thing. Like I've just kind of noticed like how many movies they've kind of been in together. But who knows? It is a bit of a stretch, but maybe.
When they announced Tessa Thompson, I was like, okay, this is interesting because sci-fi comedy in Thor seems like it could be an interesting dynamic, and they kind of teased a female lead at the end of the first Men in Black, and then they kind of wrote her out of the second sequel.
Right? Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. Like again, like trying to do things differently. Mm-hmm. Why not have a female lead be one of the main agents? So So I kind of followed the production is not very closely at all. I didn't really. I was like, okay, this is coming, and it'll be coming out next year. And for the first time in a while, we're talking about a movie that actually just was produced and then is coming out on a scheduled release date.
Yeah.
We've had talked about a couple movies as of late where like the release date kept getting changed or reshoots or whatever, but this is just a movie that was filmed, done, and is coming out when it was supposed to come out.
Yep.
This is admittedly like the 4th week in a row where I've gone to the theater to see a new movie. So I don't know if it's just because I'm getting a little fatigued by seeing so many movies, but honestly, like before we even get into the movie, guys, for those of you who are wondering, should I go see this in theaters? This is a movie you can easily like catch when it's streaming.
Yeah, this movie is a good example of if you're a huge Men in Black fan, you might as well go see it. But if you're like an average casual fan, you're like, oh, I'm kind of interested in seeing it, but that's dependent on like how good it is and whatnot. Wait until it comes to home video. I would agree with that.
This movie is also continuing the recent trend of critics and audiences having different opinions on the film.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
So like, Aladdin, Godzilla, and now this movie are cases where critic scores are vastly different than audience scores. And I think in all these cases, I mean, I didn't see Godzilla, but with Aladdin and Men in Black, I think the critics are being way too harsh in the movie.
Yeah.
Did you see what the tomato meter is saying right now for critics on Men in Black?
It's probably low, right?
24%.
Oh, man. Wow.
I genuinely don't believe the movie is that bad. Like, I don't even think, like, I would, if I could somehow doctor the tomato meter or the critics score, I would put it, like, at least so it's fresh. So at least 60%.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we have to remember, too, with Rotten Tomatoes is that, like, and there have been all sorts of discussions about, how exactly do they judge whether a review is good or not, right? Because some people out front come out and they're like, I love this movie, blah, blah, blah. I had a few problems, but I still love this movie. Okay, that's a positive review. But sometimes reviews are a little more mixed, right? So maybe someone liked the movie but still had a lot of problems with it, and maybe Rotten Tomatoes looks at it and they're like, oh, it looks negative. Let's put it on the negative side. Like, you got to wonder, does that mean 24 out of 100 critics are the only ones that like the movie, or is the number really higher but they just saw so much negativity that you just got to wonder exactly like their scale for how they make that
because not everyone includes like some kind of rating system in their reviews.
That's right. Like Leonard Maltin, for example, a film historian and critic that I really respect. I miss his movie guides because that's where you'd get the 3 or 4 star rating, or like out of 4 stars. But on his website, you go there and there's no star rating, and it's like, man, I want a star rating.
The audience score is sitting at 67%.
Oh, that's not bad, yeah.
Which I think is a fair number to give the movie.
Definitely.
But since you're a movie buff, like, why do you think this is happening? Why are these movies coming out doing terribly with critics?
Yeah.
But then audiences are like okay with them.
So I would absolutely recommend. I think the name of the video, it's from Nostalgia Critic, a guy who I watch all of his videos. He made a video called When Are the Critics Wrong? And basically he was talking about the fact that, you have critics reviewing all these movies, and people, of course, will like take the critic's word by law, right? And it's like, oh, if that critic didn't like that movie, now I'm not going to go see it in theaters, blah, blah, blah. But the nostalgia critic Doug Walker is the name of a guy, actually made some interesting points. And I think this is a case of you got to imagine all these critics, if they were working 20 years ago when the first Men in Black movie came out, I bet you anything that they probably saw it and probably liked it and like saw like, oh, there's good chemistry, it's funny, it's entertaining, it's, you know, it's all this stuff. But we got to remember that when critics go to the movies, critics have to see all sorts of movies. Critics don't have, I would venture to guess they don't have as much flexibility as we do when we go to see the movies that we want to see, right? So I think that's why, like, critics go see good movies, they see bad movies, they see average movies. So I don't think there were really any critics that were really really excited for Men in Black International, because remember too, like for them, it's work, right? They're not going for fun. I mean, yes, they'll see good movies once in a while and be like, oh, this is great, A+. But then when you think about people going to movies, normally, like, if I hear about a movie not doing poorly, I'm not going to go see it in theaters. I'm only going to see the movies that I want to see in theaters. So I think that audience score is representative of the fact that people who went to see the Men in Black, the Men in Black International, were going because they were excited, because they wanted to see another Men in Black movie. And really, when you're going to see a movie like that, you know, like you want to like the movie, right? And even in my case, like, I was hoping the movie wasn't awful, and it wasn't, thank goodness. But when critics go to see a movie like this, for them, like, think about all the big blockbuster movies they have to see, and after a while, I think they just get tired of seeing the same old blockbuster. And after a while, that excitement that we have going to see this movie, some critics, I feel like it's just different because they're seeing movies under different circumstances than we are. And Doug Walker, the guy who did this One of the Critics Wrong video, if you look it up on YouTube, goes into more detail, but I think kind of brings up a lot of good points as to why we see cases of a movie getting 24% by critics, but then 67% by audiences, because I don't think sometimes we go with the same intentions and other times we don't. And critics go there because they're working, it's their job, and we're going for a fun summer movie because it's the summertime and we like seeing movies.
Excellent analysis.
Thanks.
It got a B, like a solid B from CinemaScore.
Right.
And you're familiar with CinemaScore, I would assume?
Yeah, I am.
So that seems kind of like, the people who went and saw it didn't love it, didn't hate it. They were able to enjoy it.
Yep.
How do you think this is going to translate into actual money raised? So, talking about the box office now, predictions coming into the weekend we're looking very good, because they were looking at all the lead factors, like how many views on IMDb does it have,
right,
or how many what views do the trailers have on YouTube. Like, they have all these kind of metrics that kind of show how well a movie is going to open. Mm-hmm. And they were predicting that the movie was going to make about $30 million, which was a huge disappointment because even the lowest of the Men in Black films with Men in Black 3 made $51 million its opening weekend.
Yeah.
So knowing that the previous installment made $51, the predictions were $30, how much do you think the movie made this weekend?
Well, I have a pretty good idea because I as part of my Sunday tradition, around 1 p.m. I check Box Office Mojo.
Hey!
Yeah. That's something like I love doing because I love seeing, like, what's the movie going to, what does it look like it's going to make. Now, remember, those are the estimates, not the final
but they're usually
actuals.
Pretty close.
Yes, normally
Scarily
they are pretty
close.
Yes, although except for cases where you might have, like, I don't know, I'm pretty sure something like Avengers Endgame was off by like $3 or $4 million because people were like, it's going to be big, but then they slightly underestimated how big it was going to be.
Yeah.
So I think so what I saw for MIB International was it made about $28.5 million.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. So now, to be fair, come tomorrow, I could see that number going up ever so slightly for all the people that maybe didn't, like, order their tickets online and are going to see it tonight. But yeah, that's a pretty low opening. Like, that's lower than that movie we talked about last week.
Oh yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but just trust me when I say that that's like $5 million lower. So you get the sense that there's a bit of franchise fatigue. I mean, when I went to see it yesterday at 11:30 a.m., the theater was mostly full. Now, I think that's because it's cheaper when you go see it in the morning at the Landmark cinemas that I went to see close to my place. But on the other hand, like, there were a whole bunch of families there that, like, clearly wanted to see this movie. But it just seems to me that I think that number is representative of, that's all of, like, the Men in Black fans over the years going to see it, not so much newer people being like, oh, this looks interesting, I guess I'll check it out.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I saw it at a theater last night that was also fairly full. Mm-hmm. So I was like, and this was like 6:40, so typical, like, kind of like evening showing.
Yeah.
But it is kind of shocking because I get like most of the movies that have come out this summer have underperformed financially.
Yeah.
Like Godzilla opened at a fraction of what its predecessor. Life of Pets opened at like a fraction of what its previous film opened. So
and that other movie too that also didn't open. The name of the movie that must not be named.
Yeah, I can't remember for some reason.
That's right. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, so I don't know. This certainly would suggest that if we were to try and like look at the last month, outside of Aladdin, which opened pretty big, it sounds like everyone spent all their movie ticket money on going to see Avengers.
Probably.
Back in April.
Probably.
And like I don't know, is this truly just the era where we're finally seeing people fatigued of these franchise films, or is it just that the films being made aren't good enough to actually garner the interest?
I think there are a few different factors at play. Number one, I think there is a sense of summer fatigue because there are so many big movies coming. Like basically, as far back as I can remember, every summer has been jam-packed with like a Marvel movie or a DC movie or this franchise continuing or this sequel or this spinoff or this remake or whatnot. There's been a lot of that. And I think as the theater prices get hiked up, people are less likely to go see as many movies. So that means once in a while they might have a certain movie that they were going to see, but then they decide, no, maybe I should save my money and see it on this other movie. And all it takes is, 10,000 people to make that same decision, and then you have a movie making $15 million less than it would have. You have that. I think it's also... 2016 was a bit of a doozy when it came to that summer, where you had movies like... Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Out of the Shadow. You had Independence Day, Resurgence. You like Legend of Tarzan. You had a lot of, or like even Warcraft, a lot of summer movies that just didn't perform that well. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people, myself included, are going on Rotten Tomatoes, are reading critic reviews, going on CinemaScore, and I think that can be a deal breaker. That who wants to spend like $30 to go see a movie that they're going to come away saying like, yeah, it was okay. Like they want to go and have a good time and step out of the movie and say, that was a lot of fun. I really had a great time. And sometimes the numbers show that if the movie's not well received, save your money for something else. I think the other thing to keep in mind too is that next week we have Toy Story 4 coming out. And Toy Story 4 is going to do very, very well. If Toy Story 3 was any indication, given that it was 11 years between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, Toy Story 3 still made over $400 million domestically. Toy Story 4 is going to do well. Spider-Man Far From Home is going to do well. The Lion King is going to do well. And I wouldn't be surprised if Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw also does well, because you have Jason Statham and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I think there are some bigger tentpole movies.
You didn't need to throw The Rock in there. Come on. Just say Dwayne Johnson. We all know who he is.
Yeah. So anyways, though, my point being is that I think everyone went to go see Endgame, but now I think most people, they're waiting for Toy Story 4 or Spider-Man Far From Home or The Lion King or Hobbs and Shaw. I think they're waiting for those bigger other tentpole movies to come out still.
Okay, so I would you're on the money there. And
thanks.
And I before we even started talking, I said wait for this one to be streamed, because it's genuinely not worth the average person's time to go and see it, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Which is a shame, because as we talk about it, like maybe I'm just too much of a fan and I have too many ideas of how I think they could have made this movie better.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's just get down to it. This is Men in Black International.
Yeah.
So what do you think the story was? Like, if you had to write the synopsis for the back of the Blu-ray case, what would you say?
So I would say...
We are a rumor, recognizable only as deja vu and dismissed just as quickly.
I want in.
Welcome to MIB.
You've got some big shoes to fill.
You will be with Agent H.
Come on.
Well, it's not going to save itself.
See, we protect the Earth
from the scum of the universe.
Felt good.
Do we have a plan?
I can't believe that actually worked.
Just try.
Men in Black.
You have a new pairing of MIB agents. You have Agent H, played by Chris Hemsworth, and then you have Agent M, played by Tessa Thompson. Agent H is someone who's been doing very well as an agent. He's seen lots of success. Things are going well for the most part for him in the I guess the London branch of MIB. But then you have Tessa Thompson, who's in this interesting situation where she saw something happen as a child, and she knows, she has a pretty good gut feeling that these MIB people exist somewhere. But of course, because they're so secretive, it means she has to go and try and find them. So of course, surprise, surprise, not a spoiler because you see it in the trailers, she is successful in her attempt to find the MIB branch, and her first mission is to go to London because apparently there's some sort of issue going on there. And of course, when she goes there, that's where she meets Chris Hemsworth, and then lots of excitement and adventure ensues from there.
Now, I don't know if it was because they kept the Danny Elfman music.
Yeah. Oh, man, talk about some nostalgia. Jeez.
But it certainly, if I can say positive things about the movie, it did certainly feel like the world of Men in Black.
Agreed.
And it was just, you're seeing other characters who occupy this same world going on their own little merry ways, which I thought was interesting.
Yep.
And it didn't, people are calling it a spin-off. I would hazard to call it a spin-off because it kind of is, because it's like it's not the same characters from the other films, but I would consider it more of a sequel, because if you're talking about the concept of Men in Black, then it is more of just an actual sequel, and you just kind of change out the main. I don't know where you kind of stop calling it a sequel and more of a spin-off, but to me it felt more like a sequel.
I would say in the spectrum of sequels on one side and spin-offs on the other side, I would put it somewhere in the middle, because Agent O, played by Emma Thompson, she is a recurring character from the third Men in Black movie. So they come back to see her, and of course she has a few scenes. So in that way, yeah, that's kind of like the link bringing you back to that Men in Black world, that yes, even though the characters are different, there's still, it's not so much, even though yes, she goes to the London branch, there's still some connections to the first three movies. So yeah, I'd say it's somewhere in the middle for me.
It certainly lives up to its title, international, because you certainly do see other parts of the world, not just the London branch of the Men in Black, but you do see other countries they go to, and at one point they're in the desert. So in terms of being international, it did its job. I can't really remember from the previous films, but did they ever suggest that there's other branches of the Men in Black? I always thought it was just the one in New York.
It's possible. I bet you there's a line here and there that discusses it. I don't know if they made such a big deal out of it because you had those characters in that same location and you just worked with that for those three movies. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of line or something that hints at the fact that there are other organizations or like other branches of the Men in Black.
Did you see the second Kingsman movie?
I did, yes.
So when the Kingsmen go to America and they meet the Statesmen, it's the same kind of organization, but it's very different because it has the American flavor to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I heard that this was going to be the international Men in Black and you're going to see the British Men in Black, I was kind of expecting it to be a little more themed, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
It just felt like another Men in Black office, except with more British accents.
That's right. It seems to be that classic case of, hey, here's this new thing we're going to show you, and then you get there like, okay, this is kind of cool, but then they're like, oh, but by the way, it's kind of basically like the other thing that you saw before. We're just basically like changing the names out. Because, when you think about it, and you think about the scenes that happen in London, there... Yeah, there's it doesn't seem like they go into that much differences. And this reminds me of the Harry Potter movies, seeing all of them and then seeing Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. One of the cool things about the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movie was the fact that they actually made an effort to show how the wizarding world, in the States, was different from the where it was in the UK, and so I thought that was kind of cool how they'd bring up something from Harry Potter and they'd say, well, that's not what we call it, for here we call it this other thing. You're like, oh, that makes sense because they're a different place. So yeah, and then in Men in Black International, it does feel very much like everything's pretty much the same. It's just London, and people talk with British accents.
Yeah, they literally have the same suits, same style of sunglasses, same kind of cars. And you would think because the original Men in Black idea is an American government conspiracy theory thing, that maybe would be a little different in England or other parts of the world. But it generally seems like nope, no matter where you go, the Men in Black is kind of like the same thing, which on a certain level is kind of interesting because it basically makes it like a franchise where it's like as if it's McDonald's or something, where it's like
right,
you get the same experience wherever you go.
Yeah,
and that's sort of, in its own way, kind of builds up the mythology of this world. It's like this is the Men in Black, and no matter where you go, they operate under the same kind of modus operandi, and everything is the same, which is kind of the problem with the movie in the sense because it is just more of the same stuff.
Yep.
And I jump back to my previous point. I think they really should have gone back to the roots in the comics and introduced some of the other paranormal, supernatural enemies for the Men in Black to fight.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, like there's no real central antagonist in this movie. There's a bunch of like different opponents they come across.
Yeah, and they do which obviously, like, I won't say any spoilers yet. I'm assuming we're still waiting before we get into that. But yeah, like you say, yeah, there's not, like, you have the shapeshifters, but they're the external threat. They're the physical threat, right? Because like, oh, watch out or they'll kill you, right? But then the other villain, yeah, they do it in such a way where it doesn't feel like a villain that is established from the beginning and that we deal with at the end. It's just a bit different, and yeah, I feel like it's hard for it to hit home the way they did it.
And there's nothing really unique about the fact that these villains are aliens.
Yeah.
They're aliens. Like, they look different and they have certain powers. They're aliens. So
yep.
I think it would have been really interesting to like do a Men in Black movie where they do come across like a werewolf or something that they don't have an answer to. Oh, we can't just use this. Well, maybe they could just blast it. I don't know, but
yeah.
But at least it would be something a little different, because it's like, yeah, there's this balance with sequels of giving you the same experience but doing something different.
Yeah.
Still a potato chip, but maybe like a different flavored potato chip.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
They kind of have a mystery in the movie. Like, there's this suggestion that there could be a mole inside the Men in Black.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go the way I was afraid it was going to go, which I was thankful for.
Me too. Yeah, I was feeling that as well.
Oh no! But it doesn't go that way, which is good.
Yeah.
However, and the kind of like the mystery they do build around, who could it be?
Yeah.
For an organization as large as the Men in Black is,
yeah,
they really only present two potential people as a mole.
Exactly.
And you're just like, what? Like,
that was my problem with it too, is that, yeah, the movie kind of makes it pretty clear. It's like, well, they want you to think it's this one person. And I'm like, but if they did that, then that's boring, because we all assume it's going to be him. So, but then like you say, it really can only be another person. I'm like, imagine if it was like one of the aliens that she spoke with briefly, and it's like, oh, this alien you saw briefly? No, they're actually the mole, but it's not that. And I feel like that's the difficulty in mystery, in movies that have a mystery, is that if it's a question of who did it, there's really only two to choose from. Whereas, I don't know, in a case of, like, I was thinking about Murder on the Orient Express, which, whatever you say about the movie, like, I really liked it. The cool thing that I thought one of its strengths was that when the murder happens, like, there's literally like 10 different characters that they introduce, and the whole time it's like, who could it be? Who could it be? These three are like the most likely, but maybe it could be this person. But then the way that they handle it in the end, when they make the reveal of who's involved, I just felt was more interesting, more exciting, and more of a surprise. Whereas when you have like two potential characters, it's like, which one's it going to be? Is it going to be the one we suspect it is, or the other guy? Because whoever it is, it's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's not like, no, I can't believe, like, I've seen too many TV shows that have so many great, like, jaw-dropping moments, like, shocking. And you're like, what? This happened? And yeah, what they tried to do there is like, nope, it was one or the other.
The dynamic between H and M is actually pretty much the opposite as it is in Thor Ragnarok, because in that movie we're with Thor the whole time, and we know who he is because he's been in the other movies, and then he encounters Valkyrie, and we don't really know her story, and so like there's like mystery. It's like, what is his girl's deal? And she's from Asgard. Like there's like a lot of mystery around her character, and it's about like trying to like dig up what her story is. Here it's the other way around. Like, we're introduced to Agent M first.
Yes.
And while we don't have several movies worth of history with her, we at least get to spend a little bit more time on her story. And so when she meets Agent H, it's kind of the other way around, where it's like we're told some things about him, and so like the rest of the movie you're trying to like kind of piece together his story.
Right.
Which just, it presents a different dynamic from how we've seen them before. And the way they kind of play off each other in that sense has to be a little different, because she's kind of like the more, I guess, not straight-laced, but the one who's more like, all right, let's do the thing we got to do. And in this case, it's H who's less interested in doing said things than as it was in Thor.
Right.
People kind of really like the chemistry between these two. They just seem like, it doesn't seem like, it just seems like they're friends.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get the sense these are amazing performances and they got this like kinetic energy with each other.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not that. But if I had to give another strength to the movie, another thing that I liked, I would say that their dynamic, it helps that it's different in some ways from Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith's dynamic, given that like Tommy Lee Jones was a grizzled veteran and Will Smith was a hot-headed rookie. So at least here you kind of have different flaws and disagreements
You got
happening.
the hot-headed veteran and the rules following rookie.
Right, yeah, that's right. That's what you have instead. But I think performance-wise, I was able, like, I enjoyed the two of them and how they kind of worked together. Not amazing, but not awful, right? And really, like, when you watch a movie where you're hoping that the two characters can just have something, anything, I think they did a decent job.
Yeah, and to me, at least the way it was written or the way that they were portrayed, they were not complete stereotypes. Like, they were kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I've seen a few episodes, yeah.
So, for those of you who are Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans, Agent H is a lot like Jake Peralta.
Right. Okay.
He's this guy who's, like, good at his job, but he doesn't really, like, he sees the rules and the procedures and everything as kind of a barrier to accomplishing what he wants to. And he likes to have fun, so he finds ways to make his job fun.
Right.
And so when you first meet him, he seems like an airhead. He seems like a jerk.
Yeah.
But then as you get to know him, you realize, oh, like, he actually does care, and he actually, like, is competent. Like, he knows how to do his job. He's not just some guy who's gotten by on his good looks.
Yeah.
So, and he's surprisingly in touch with his feelings. Like, you certainly don't get that impression when you first meet him, but yeah, he's a big softy, it seems.
Right.
Whereas Agent M, she comes across as, like, super analytical and kind of like Tommy Lee Jones almost, in that this is the way it is, and feelings are, like, she almost sounds like a robot. some of her dialogue.
Right.
But she's a little more nuanced, I guess, which I was appreciative of, because we only have so many Datas, or we only need so many of those types of Spocks, or
right, exactly.
We don't need another one of those types of characters.
Yep.
Once again, another thing I'll say nice about the movie: the alien designs are fairly inventive.
Yep.
As the original trilogy went on, they kind of leaned more and more into CGI as opposed to practical effects.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a okay balance here.
Yep.
Like, there were actually some genuine effort put into, like, making costumes for aliens as opposed to just having everything created in CGI.
Yep.
So that was a plus. And I can't help but, like, bring up Pawnee.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's our MVP right there.
Yes, a lot of people seem to really like him. I wasn't crazy with the design. It still looked a little like.
That's fair. Maybe needed a few more drafts to kind of perfect it.
Did you find him helpful or hurtful to the film?
No, I liked him. I think when you've had 3 Men in Black movies where for the most part it's just Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, it kind of makes sense that you'd still have our 2 main characters in this movie do a lot together, but you have, like, the little Pawnee guy to kind of spice things up, right? And you see how Pawnee, because really he's not in the whole movie. He plays a bigger part in the second half, but that he seems more loyal to Tessa Thompson, right? And that, that way when Tessa Thompson, if there's any time where she's not happy with Chris Hemsworth, that now it's like Agent M and little Pawnee against the more experienced agent. So yeah, no, I thought he was fine. He had a lot of mildly amusing lines.
Mildly amusing.
Yeah, that's the way I describe the humor in this movie, because I think the first Men in Black movie is genuinely funny. I think the chemistry between Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones is so funny, especially a lot of Tommy Lee Jones kind of like deadpan, like, yep, this is how we do things and blah, blah, blah. I think he had some of the best lines in that movie, but I think in this movie I didn't laugh out loud once, but I smiled a lot of the time. I was like, those are some mildly amusing lines. Like, that's kind of funny in theory. Maybe the delivery wasn't quite there, but yeah, I felt a lot of the humor was mildly amusing. Which, I mean, to be fair, could be just not funny at all, but it was, once again, right in the middle. It was mildly amusing.
Well, there you go. I think that's about as all we can say before we get into the spoilerverse. So. Yep. There'll be a time code where you can skip the spoilers, but as I said, like, don't rush out to see this. So feel free to just listen. And then if our conversation of the spoilers sound interesting to you, then, when that movie pops up on Netflix, give it a watch. Let's just start by talking about Molly's character.
Okay.
So she's essentially a conspiracy theorist at the beginning. Like, she meets this alien as a child. It makes me wonder how many people are like her in the world of the Men in Black. Like, if they're so sloppy at their job that, like, there's all these, like, neuralizations that are going on, and then there's all these people who have family members that have been neuralized but they haven't been.
Yeah.
And the fact that, like, in present day she's able to just kind of like walk into the crime scene and sneak into the MIB headquarters without anyone noticing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, how many people like her are there that are able to, like, discover the truth about the Men in Black?
And right before they make the call, the Men in Black show up, and they're like, oh, blah 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 blah, neuralyzer, bzz, and they're like, oh yeah, you saw a raccoon or whatnot. Make sure your lids on the trash cans are tight, and then they drive away. Like, they don't try and apprehend the creature or anything like that. So my thought would be, what if you had like 2 of those creatures? The father sees one of them, but there's another one in hiding. Then the Men in Black come. They do the neuralyzer thing, and they take the one creature, thinking that they've solved the problem. But there's actually another one up in the bedroom, and that's the one that Tessa Thompson sees. That's the one that Molly sees, and then that's where kind of everything stems from there. Because really, it does seem a bit sloppy that the Men in Black are just like, neuralyzer, see you later. It's like, well, what about the creature they saw? You're not gonna get that and try and get it out of that neighborhood so no one else sees it. I felt that was a bit sloppy, but I do like how it leads into her being a conspiracy theorist and her trying to find the Men in Black. I think that's a good setup, even if it's executed averagely.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like there's so much potential with this idea of like, and we've seen a handful of other characters in the other movies that are like I remember in the second one they get that VHS tape from David Cross, and he's like a big conspiracy theorist
right?
who thinks the Men in Black are real.
Yep.
I think the idea of like someone who is so dedicated to proving the Men in Black are real ends up joining the organization. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I just feel like the way it's executed it was okay, like you just said. Like it was cool to like see like the world of the Men in Black where like they have these kind of like projector fields set up to like block people from seeing crash landed spaceships and it's like people can look at all the things coming in from outer space. I just wasn't. And then when she gets there, she's like, I didn't really get a sense like why she wanted to join the Men in Black so badly. It's like it's just because she, like, her whole mission seemed to be like prove these guys exist. But then it's like, I've got no life, I've got nothing else to go live for. So she's like, she's not even really sure like what the Men in Black do, but she's willing to like kind of dedicate her whole life to it.
Yeah, I think what happened was, unless maybe there's a deleted scene that just didn't get put into the final movie. I would imagine that while she researched all those years, that yes, one of the big draws is I need to know that the Men in Black are real. But I think the other draw was that she got so fascinated and she spent so time with it that maybe during that time she thought, this actually seems kind of cool. Maybe I can actually like do this with my life and not do my boring 9-to-5 customer service a job. But it's true. You make a good point that they don't really go into that much detail about like why she wants to join. We get the sense why she wants to find that they're real, but then where are the scenes that show that she wants to become one of the Men in Black? She just says it like, oh yeah, like I'm the perfect person because I have no ties or loves or this or that. It's like, that's nice, but is that really reason enough to want to become a Men in Black?
Yeah, and there's just a couple things that her character did instead. I was like, okay, like this is like she's the cricket gun and she's like, oh, please, I'm not going to use this.
Yeah, the noisy cricket.
But it was like, no, like that's part of the like onboarding is that you get this little tiny gun that packs a big punch at the beginning. Like you don't
yeah.
And like some of the lines, she's like, every woman's a queen. I was like, okay, like I get that we're trying to like, again, like present a strong female character in this movie. But I feel like there's a way to do it like Spider-Verse did or even Bumblebee did where you just have this female character there and she doesn't have all these lines of dialogue and behaviors that are just like,
right, yeah, it's the fact that they're there and that they get to be a main character and that, it's more of like the show don't tell. But really, they do have a few occasions where they tell us and we're like, yep, understood. I did find the one line mildly amusing where Agent O says like something about the Men in Black, and of course Tessa Thompson gives that look, and then she's like, I've tried. It's like, don't get me started on it, but they're that's what they're called, the Men in Black. So it is kind of a funny nod to the fact that, and then Chris Hemsworth references later on where he's like, Men and Women in Black, and gives a thumbs up, and Tessa Thompson's like, yeah, okay. So those were mildly amusing lines. I'll give him that.
One thing I've learned from Pixel Patch is this concept of the Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, that's right.
In movies.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? When it turns out that little alien's a Chekhov's gun.
Right. Yeah.
What are the odds that the one alien she met as a child that was like the signifier for her whole change in life turns out years later is working for this arms dealer? I was like, give me a break.
Yeah, quite the convenience, huh?
Like
then, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, I can only suspend my disbelief so far.
Yeah, see, I feel like, because don't get me wrong, like, yes, like it's a solution and it helps them get out of the sticky situation that they're in. But it's funny how, like, at the beginning of the movie, they meet each other briefly, and then they never see each other again until towards the end, and then they have like, oh, is that you? Oh, Molly, and then you have the kind of quick flashback scene, which, like, for the record, like, I got it. I feel like there are other clever ways to kind of remind the audience about what's going on than the whole, let's go back to the beginning of the movie and show you exactly what you saw, like, literally an hour ago. It's like, I get it, okay? I understand. But I feel like
you get it? They met each other when she was younger.
Wait, what? I just feel like there might have been maybe more of a smoother transition to kind of remind us of that idea about halfway through. Because, yeah, no, it does feel like it's the very convenient of, like, how do we get them out of this problem? Oh, that alien all the way at the beginning that we literally saw for a minute. Let's bring him back for a few minutes. And, yeah, it feels pretty convenient. I feel like there was a better way they could have done that, but alas.
I saw one YouTuber basically comment that the whole scene with the arms dealer was unnecessary. That it just felt like a side plot, or just a time away from the story.
Which, you know what? And someone also brought up the point that they're like, wow, at the end of the movie, like, we see the shapeshifters again, and it's like, oh, what's gonna happen now? What sort of battle? Oh, hey, we beat them. I guess we're done, right? Another one of my criticisms is that, so the movie, credits included, is 1 hour and 55 minutes, I think. It could have been shorter. Please, but, like, I'm pretty sure the first Men in Black movie was like 95 minutes. Like, I don't think it was longer than 100 minutes, but prove me wrong if you do happen to come across that joke.
1 hour, 37 minutes.
Boom. See what I mean? And I feel like that's a tight movie that when it's over, you're like, that was the perfect length. But this movie, yeah, please, like, I would have loved another 10 or 15 minutes. I think that would have strengthened the movie to make it a little shorter, because by the time you get to the end and you get to the big reveal, you're like, come on, guys, let's just wrap it up and be done with this, please. I've had my fill. I'm good. Let's roll the credits.
Yeah, I mean, aside from giving us more insight into H's character, the whole arms dealer scene was kind of pointless.
Yeah, well, really, it's a whole, like, a plot thing, right? It's like, how do we do this one thing we need to do in the plot? Oh, let's have another Fortress of For Sure Death scene that we have to go to and get all this stuff to happen. And yeah, it does kind of go on a little longer, and there's nothing truly amazing about it. So yes, I agree that just move on, guys.
We kind of talked about this in non-sports, the whole kind of mystery around the Men in Black going bad. I genuinely was afraid that they were going to go for like a Winter Soldier type thing where it's like, turns out the whole Men in Black organization has turned evil.
Oh, right.
And that it's like the whole thing is, because they make some comments like, oh, it feels like, we used to protect the Earth from scum, and now we're like protecting the scum.
Right, that could be a hint.
So I thought, oh gosh, because I find movies with organizations like this, when you get to the sequels, it either turns into, let's destroy the organization,
right,
or let's have the organization destroy itself. Like, let's have it come out that the good guys are the bad guys. And I was like, come on, like, don't go there.
Yeah.
In this movie.
Yep.
And it certainly like seemed that it was going that way for a little while. It's like, oh, the whole Men in Black is evil and corrupted, and there's only a handful of people who are still good, or maybe the whole British office is bad, or
right.
But that doesn't sound like what you were expecting.
No, that's fair. Actually, see, I thought I was on the same page there, but no, what I thought it was that Rafe Spall, the guy who plays Agent C, I think is his name, he's set up to be like, because he's always he doesn't like Agent H, and you always get that sense of they're kind of butting heads. So I thought, if they make him the mole, like, that's what we're expecting. That would be such, and I know maybe they might think, oh, we set up this character, we think he's the character, but then it's another character. Imagine if we kept it as that same character, the initial one, maybe the audience wouldn't see that coming. No, we do see that coming, and that would be very, very predictable, so please don't do that. So I'm glad they didn't do that. Even though, of course, the next logical choice, the next character, it was like, when it was revealed that it was Liam Neeson was actually the one that was kind of the high T. Yeah, that was another mildly amusing name.
That was the only British thing about the.
That's right. That and then the scene where Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth both get into the car, and but of course the steering wheel is on the right side in Britain, right? And Tessa Thompson's like, the steering wheel should be here.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, like, there was a bit of a twist there to find out. It's like, it wasn't necessarily that Liam Neeson's character went bad; it's that he kind of got absorbed by the hive,
right? Yeah.
And became. So it wasn't that he was betraying the organization; it's that he was basically like overtaken by this.
That's right.
Other force, which doesn't sound like any other movies I've seen lately. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way it was written, it was kind of unclear to me, like, if it was going to be C or T. Right. I was like, oh, like. okay, well, this scene suggests that it could be him. But for an organization as large as the Men in Black, like the idea that there could be a mole, it's very plausible for an organization that size.
Sure.
But they only really give us the two suspects as potential moles.
Exactly.
There's a brief moment where I think it might actually be H, where it might be Chris Hemsworth, but that kind of passes.
Yeah.
Most of the attention is kind of spent on either T or C being the mole.
Yeah, it really, and that's a fair point. I was thinking about that too afterwards. That, like, what if it's H? Like, what if it's like the one guy that we don't expect, the guy that we've been like kind of letting our guard down? I'm like, okay, he's growing on us. But to be fair, I've seen other movies where it's that whole question of not so much like, it's still the idea of who is the culprit, right? Who is the mystery person that we're not sure of? And there was one movie. I won't say what it is because I don't want to spoil it. I'll tell you after we're done recording. But it's the main character, right? Like the main character is the one that's actually the culprit. And really, like you're like, what? But then you think about it more and you're like, no, seriously, what? How does that even make sense, right? So it really, in this case, between our two suspects, it had to be one or the other. So
it was just kind of underwhelming. It's like, okay, like. I was actually interested in this idea where, even though I didn't want it to happen, I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. Where like the kind of the mission of the Men in Black is pivoting away from protecting the Earth from evil aliens, and now we're just trying to broker the relationships with alien criminals. Like that seemed like an interesting idea that they just didn't go anywhere with. And in the end, it's like, okay, he's a mole on the inside of the Men in Black, and it seems like all the Hive want is just access to that one portal thing to get that one weapon.
Yeah.
Which I get it. They show that the weapon has a lot of destructive potential.
Yep.
But I don't know. It just didn't. Again, it was a good idea.
Yep.
And it just wasn't executed very well.
Yeah, I wish there was a way. Now, to be fair, it's tricky because this takes more time. But if there was a way to introduce a few more characters that still had a purpose in the story, so that way, towards the end, when you're wondering who is it going to be, at least there might be more uncertainty, because if you can write them all in such a way where this character might have this motive, this other character might have that motive, but then there's these two other guys, they might have motive as well. I feel like that's one of the ways that can make it more fun for the audience to try and figure out who it is. So there's that. But then the other thing too, actually, that I did like, and maybe not done perfectly, but I think was a really cool idea, executed fairly well, was how when they see the painting in the office about, how did you defeat the Hive? Oh, with our wits and our so-and-so weapon or whatnot. That like Chris Hemsworth says that a few times throughout the movie. But then Tessa Thompson is like, no, really, like, how did you defeat them? And he just repeats the same thing. And then you realize like, that's part of it, right? Is that he doesn't remember how the rest of it ended. And that's a bit of a hint in the beginning scene as well, is that they're like, all right, let's fight this Hive, this alien. Cut to Tessa Thompson as a little girl, right? So we don't see how that action scene finishes. Mm-hmm. We just see the lead up to it. So the fact that he kind of realizes, like, no, he doesn't remember the way that ended is a nice touch, given the fact that the whole reveal of like who was behind it was like, and then he kind of explains, he realizes what's happening to him, and you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. That helps a little bit.
So I mean, part of the appeal for me of seeing the original films is that you have the cops basically investigating something, and so they go meet with people. Sometimes something happens that the normal people aren't supposed to see.
Yep.
And so they neuralize them, and then they give this like story as to like what they actually saw.
Right.
You don't really you see people get neuralized, but you never get to see that kind of comedy bit where like, all right, so this is what actually is happening here, guys. That's what you actually saw.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't really see any of that in this movie, which was kind of like something I missed out on.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like the big question, I guess, that the Men in Black franchise hasn't really answered. It's like, why is it so important to operate as if aliens don't exist?
Right.
Like, why is it so important that people don't know that aliens are real?
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, by modern day, by 2019, that I think people would be, if these aliens have truly been living here as long as they have, I feel like there's less concern of humans knowing about the existence of aliens and the Men in Black.
Yeah.
I can see if it was like the comics again, where it's like there's literally all these potential threats, and it's like, okay, like let's just let these people live their lives without having to worry about these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I question their need for
Anonymity.
That's it.
Anonymity. Wow.
At this point.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a really interesting idea because as we were talking about with the movie earlier, the fact that it just feels like more of the same, and it's the whole like, oh, it's a mystery and not done that well. I was trying to think to myself like, what would be like a cool starting point? I mean, I feel like it's a little less likely that they're going to make a fifth Men in Black movie, but really, if you were to take the fourth movie and just start from scratch, like what cool concept could you come up with and follow through well enough with? And then you even mentioned too, like a good point of like, why is there anonymity about these aliens? And maybe there's somewhere there's a story too, like maybe some aliens like we want to be known to the whole world, so we're gonna kind of do some big thing to let the global world know that we're aliens, and maybe the Men in Black have to fight against that. There could be something there.
In the climax, when Agent C says, "I'm sending you some backup," I was like, "Please have J&K come in."
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool, man? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Because unfortunately, like the way they've done this kind of sequel spinoff, there's no reason why J&K wouldn't still be active in the Men in Black. Like we haven't given until they died off screen, and because their adventures seem to be so focused on New York, there's no reason why they wouldn't be in New York. It's not like the Men in Black are ever going off into space. Yeah, like at least we don't see that ever. Maybe that's another idea they should have suggested.
True, yeah,
that in here.
That is a good idea. Yeah,
but if you're gonna do a sequel spinoff like this that doesn't have the original characters, in it, you want us to believe it's the same world. There should be organic reasons as to why they're not there.
Yeah.
So tell a small story that wouldn't necessitate the need for these other agents that kind of come in and be part of the story. But this story is like, the world's in danger, there's this giant weapon, all Men in Black on hand for this. But it's like, okay, if that's the case, if that's the story you want to tell, then why are the two most popular, successful people that you have? There's only two paintings in your office. There's the one of you guys,
that's right,
and the one of them.
So
if we're to believe that these characters still exist and that they're still part of the Men in Black, because we're not told anything otherwise, and the threat this large is coming down the pipe, they should be there.
That's a great point.
If Emma Thompson can be there, why can't they be there? Or one of them be there? I was imagining like something like the 21 Jump Street, where like Johnny Depp and the other guy from the show are like in one scene.
Right. Yeah.
It's like to have some kind of passing of the torch, but no, they've got some Easter eggs to the original films in there, and that's about it.
Yeah, I don't think Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith wanted to be involved. I think that's why they're not there, because I'm pretty sure like they were asked to like do another one. They're like, no. So I would venture to guess that they're like, fine, we'll do it without them completely and do it with these other people. But yes, that would be so awesome, especially if they kept it under wraps, especially if there was like if their filming of that scene was like literally one day that no one knew about except the people that were involved, so that when you went to go see the movie, well, it's kind of like in Interstellar. Like there's a certain actor that's in Interstellar that I had no idea was in Interstellar, and then when you see him, you're like, he's in this movie? That's awesome,
like
right?
Brad Pitt in Deadpool 2.
Exactly. Yeah, for the split second, it's still so great. So yeah, that would be awesome to have seen them just briefly to help out, and then and they're like, well, glad we could help you out. Now we have to go back to New York.
Yeah, but no, we don't get that here.
Nope.
It's another missed opportunity.
Yep.
We get Frank the Pug for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
We get the Worm Guys for like 2 seconds.
Get the Noisy Cricket.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So, yeah. Any other spoilery things for you?
Geez. So let's see here. Laughs were mildly amusing. The reveal wasn't that exceptional. There were 2 very small moments that kind of bugged me of like editing, where in the beginning when Agent H is with the aliens at the table, and like they're kind of the gambling, and there's a moment like he's sitting down in one shot, then in another shot you see an alien come from behind and put something like some sort of cord or whatnot around his neck to try and strangle him out, but then you never see Chris Hemsworth like actually stand up, because in the next shot he uses his leg to kind of push back off on the guy to fight the guy. And there's one of the important things about editing is to make sure that there are enough shots to show, especially in moments of action, to show what's going on. Because if you have action that's like here, there, and everywhere, and it's not cut all that well, you're going to be confused about, well, wait, how did he get there? I thought he was on the ground. When did he hit that person? Why is he bleeding, right? So there are a few moments like that in the movie that I felt that were poorly edited. There's that one, and there's the other one where the henchman that was the little creature that Molly met as a kid, he surprises Agent H when he's like at the computers at the Fortress of For Sure Death, where like there's no lead up. It's literally like it cuts to a shot where he's there, and it's not even like getting ready for the attack. He's like, it cuts to that shot and boom, he's already on Agent H, and it's just like that. There's a little too quick. It's like, give us a few seconds of some sort of lead up or something to get the sense that Agent H is in trouble. So there are a few moments that I can say for once that like the editing was not great, but really it was just those moments. And beyond that, I don't know. I thought the movie was okay. I wish it was a little better than it was, but to be fair, I was never really looking forward to this movie in the first place, but I am surprised that it was slightly better than I expected. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. So coming around to final thoughts, Men in Black International, if I were to like rank it among the Men in Black movies, definitely the first one is still the best, which is unfortunate. When like financially it's earned the most, and everyone would say, like most people would say, it's the best one. Yeah. I would probably then go Men in Black 3, and that's partially weighted purely on like Josh Brolin's performance. Right. And then this one, Men in Black International, and then Men in Black 2 as the worst. So it's not the best and it's not the worst, and that isn't saying very much. Yeah. You know, like there are good ideas here that are just not executed well. Yeah. There's things that I think should have happened that didn't happen. And what you end up getting is a movie that feels just like a lot of the same from the other films. Yep. I genuinely feel like this is something you can catch on streaming and you're not going to miss very much. Yep. So I'll give it 2.8 out of 4 Bat Cookies.
I'm going to give it 6 out of 10 on IMDb because that's how I rate all my movies.
Okay, but you got to translate that to Bat Cookies.
Okay, so Bat Cookies are out of 4, right? Yeah. I would give it 2.3 out of 4 Bat Cookies.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's just over 50%.
Yeah, basically. But it was weird. It's like the whole Bat Cookies for me. It's like all about IMDb, right? So it's like Bat Cookies. Like I guess it's 2.3, 2.4, something like that. So
now one of the rotten critics on the Men in Black International page jokingly said, "I wish I had a neuralyzer to forget this movie." So I put before you, Ben, the movie. But I have a neuralyzer here. Is this movie bad enough that you would want me to erase the memory of it from your mind?
No, it's not that bad. I mean, it's not good. It's not great, but it's not. I've seen worse movies, so I'm okay.
Oh, really? Like I really wanted to use this neuralyzer today.
If you want to, you can go against my will, but I'd rather you didn't. I'll remember it because if other people ask me about the movie, I wanna be able to say something other than what is that a movie?
So there you go. Men in Black International is now in theaters, but in all honesty, wait for it to be on streaming before you watch it.
Yeah.
We saved you some money today.
Yep, you're welcome.
So this is normally when we would go into the Bat Jar and look at our mail, but we don't have any this week. So, Ben, I think this means that people need to be reminded how to get a hold of us.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to leave it up to you to tell them.
All right. So if you want to contact the show with a question or an idea for an episode, you can send us an email to
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
We are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. Share our posts on Facebook and make sure to like our page because we want everyone to join us inside the Bat Jar.
Yeah, so we're on YouTube, so you can subscribe and join the notification squad, as they say. So you'll get notified when our new episodes go up there. It's not video; it's an audio podcast. Mm-hmm. So you'll be staring at a photo of our logo. So it's certainly the kind of thing you'd have it playing on YouTube while you're doing stuff on other tabs. Yeah. But speaking of things you would do on YouTube, we got to remind everyone: Ben Movie Buff is a YouTube channel.
Yes, which hit 90 subscribers last week. So thank you to whoever did that. I'm greatly appreciative, and now I'm 10 subscribers away from getting 3 digits. I do have a movie coming. I do have a new video coming out soon. I think I talked about it last week, Bad Behavior at the Movies. So I shot that episode a few days ago. I'm going to be editing it in the next few days, and I'll be posting it very soon. And if you can watch it, I would greatly appreciate it.
There you go. So now it's time to go into the Bat Jar and figure out what to talk about next time. Toy Story 4 is coming out next week, but and it's very tangentially connected to nerd culture and the fact that it's a Disney product. So I don't feel like it's warranted enough to be an automatic show conversation.
Okay.
So having said that, I will make a decision here. You pull some out of the batch art, and if we think it's a good idea for next week, we'll talk about it next week.
I think, I already just moved that out of the way. Okay, so let's
get in there real.
Oh, I am. I'm mixing up this salad of suggestions.
Oh, we got one on the yellow paper.
Oh, the yellow. What does that mean?
It just means that was the day I was.
Comic book multiverses.
Oh boy.
Comic book multiverses.
Nothing like Toy Story.
Nope.
Okay, so next week we're going to be talking about the concept of multiverses in comic books, which could be fitting if the trailer from Spider-Man Far From Home is accurate to suggest that might be a thing.
That's right.
To come.
Yeah.
Of course, Mysterio's known for lying, so he could be lying about it in that trailer, but all that to say, that's going to be our topic for next week.
Mm-hmm.
So we should, before we get out of here, thank Ben the Movie Buff once again for joining us, for not erasing my memory of Men in Black International.
Yep.
I feel like you might have done something else, but I can't remember.
I do not know what you're talking about, so I vote we move on. But I do want to say thank you for having me. I always have so much fun doing these, and hopefully I'll be back again soon to chat about more nerd culture stuff.
Yes, bring your own microscope, though. It's the one we have is getting pretty dirty from all the different people using it.
Okay, I will.
So come back to the Batch Hour podcast next week when we look at the multi-worlds, the multiverses. We're going to talk about comic book multiverses. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Ben the Movie Buff.
Catch you on the flip side.
See you later.